Welcome to the From Guilt to Good podcast, where we discuss all things caregivers wish people would talk about, but don't, won't, or can't. Hi, my name is Jeanette Yates. I'm a lifelong caregiver for my mom and the founder of the Self Caregiver, where I help caregivers feel good, not guilty. And this season of the From Guilt to Good podcast has been chocked full of caregiver stories. And we have some great ones coming up. Not only am I interviewing caregivers, but I'm interviewing people who I've encountered over the course of my 40-year caregiving journey, but also people that I think you might need to know about so that you know how to find the help and support that you need. All of these upcoming episodes are going to be fantastic, but today I have something a little different for you. It's just you and me talking today. And actually, I'm going to read you something. Last year, I wrote From Guilt to Good Enough, a caregiver's journey of overcoming burnout through healing childhood trauma. And I'm going to read you just a little bit of that today to give you a sense of a little bit of my journey for those of you who don't know it yet. And also, if you're one of those people that's like, which I get, that it's like, I don't have time to read another book. Maybe this will encourage you to get this one. If you're an overwhelmed caregiver, I wrote this book for you. I wrote it as not only part of my healing journey, but in hopes that it would help you on your healing journey as well. Let me tell you, if you are a caregiver, you need some sort of healing at some point. There's a lot of grief that comes before our loved one passes away and after. There's a lot of different challenges that come our way, and all of that takes its toll. And so while I am currently in my post-caregiving journey, I'm still sharing with all of you things that helped me along the way. And the things that I share in this book are things that helped me overcome the guilt that kept me from being able to take care of myself, to be the mom and wife and coworker I wanted to be, and just in general, live life beyond caregiving. So with that said, today's episode is just going to be a few minutes long. I'm going to read the introduction and chapter 1. And if you have the book, you know the chapters are really short. So don't worry. This won't be a long reading, but it is something that I think is important, and I'm excited to share it with you today. All right, so here we go. From Guilt to Good Enough. One of my earliest memories of my mom was sitting on the floor next to her desk while she attended a night class to get her accounting degree. I was an unofficial member of the class, and I would have my notebook and pens and extra accounting punch card sheets that mom and her classmates would give me to make me feel like I also had the accounting degree, as I called it. We were always together then, between when she and my father got divorced and when she married my stepfather a few years later. 2 peas in a pod, 2 girls alone in the world, and we were inseparable. In those days, I remember my mom being busy trying to work, get a second degree, take care of me, and have a life outside of those things. My grandmother would often fret about us, saying I was drugged from pillar to post, meaning that we were running aimlessly. I don't think that was exactly true, since my mother achieved her goals, always strove to be better, to work harder, and to make ends meet, and to have enough. It was this time of us against the world after my dad and the before her second marriage and the diagnosis to come in the months after. Our bond, the unspoken and spoken understanding that we needed each other, was formed. Who wouldn't want that kind of connection with their mom? After all, we all want to be wanted and needed, and to know that our presence matters. But what happens when the mother-daughter bond gets pulled apart, then stuck back together, bringing along with it the confusion, the dysfunction, and trauma that caused the pulling apart in the first place? How did I go from being a mother-daughter duo to a mother-caregiver relationship? What happens when a diagnosis distorts everything and the bond that once made me feel so safe and secure becomes the thing that keeps me feeling stuck, afraid, and insecure? How did I cope with the trauma of losing the mom I had and feeling responsible for keeping the mom I now have alive? Becoming my mom's caregiver at such a young age, while other traumatic experiences in my life were happening, taught me to respond in ways that might have kept me safe then, but would eventually become coping skills that kept me trapped in negative thought or behavior patterns. This codependency and trauma responsive behavior not only affected my caregiving relationship, but my ability to tend to my own needs in ways that kept me safe and would allow me to heal. In the chapters that follow, you will learn how it all happened, how I became a caregiver, the generational patterns of behavior and thoughts I adopted in order to survive my situation, and how those would eventually turn into disordered behaviors around food and my body image, and other more subtle ways to make myself fit into the role I needed to fill for others. I'll also share how, despite my extensive knowledge of being a caregiver, I lacked a full understanding of how to care for myself, and how only by addressing the deep wounds of my childhood trauma, the constant worry about my mother's health, and the abuse I suffered by someone close to my family, and the other micro traumas over the course of my life, I finally broke free of the guilt and burnout cycle that kept me trapped for so long. It has taken me years to say the things written in this book, mostly because I struggled to reconcile my mother's love for me and her fear of losing me. This book is about how I learned to love my mother and care for her without carrying her trauma. It is a story of learning to care for myself in ways that are holistic and deeply healing. It is a journey of tending to my own wounds and, in doing so, healing my wounded relationship with my mother. And most of all, I share these words with you, dear reader, in the hope that my journey of healing can inspire hope in you to do the same. It contains my journey, my experience, and insights, as well as journal entries to help you process your own journey as a caregiver for your parents and a caregiver for yourself. You are worthy of the same care you give others. If you don't know where to start when it comes to giving yourself that care, if you don't think healing is possible, this book is for you. Chapter 1. I have cared for my mom as long as I can remember. I existed to do for her the things that she wished she could do or wanted me to do. At first, when mom came home from the hospital, I thought it was neat to play nurse. I got her something to drink when she needed it and helped her take her medicine and did the household chores like sweeping and cooking. And as I got older, I took on more responsibility. We didn't have a dryer for our clothes until I was a teenager. So doing laundry involved lugging the wet clothes from the washing machine to the clothesline and hanging them there. I don't think I realized this was different from normal until recently. I only knew that I was doing what my mom needed me to do, and that was all that mattered. I grew up believing that myself in this world was dependent on how she felt about the job I was doing. I lived not to disappoint her, my family, my friends, or my teachers. So I tried and failed to make the best choices all the time. Since my mom's diagnosis when I was 8 years old, it had been my job to fill in the gaps for her. What she couldn't do, I was supposed to do for her. What neither of us could do just never got done. I never learned to do it. She expected I would always be there to do my job. This situation was fine for decades. Filling in the gaps seemed like normal life routine. In retrospect, I was never far, and there were only a few seasons of my young adulthood where I was not within a short drive of my parents' house, even when I left home for college and got married. After I got married and had kids, my mom was on her own again after separating from my stepdad. This, along with her experiencing some medical setbacks, meant that about the time I had my second child, she began to slowly need a bit more from me. The gap filling began, little things here and there. When the children were babies, they came along to see Granny Jane, who was great at telling stories and baking cookies with our help, of course. But all in all, it seemed to be the normal kind of taking care of one's parents. Only I was 30 with young children, not 65 and retired. Still, as the kids started school, I was able to manage parenting, caregiving, and even started teaching Pilates, something that I enjoyed, and was flexible enough to allow me to be a stay at home mom and help my mom out as needed. At that point, I was still able to have a routine, take the kids to school, call mom, go to the grocery store, drop off a few things for mom, spend the day at the park with the kids, and then go with Granny to the doctor's office. No big deal. It was normal. But slowly, so slowly, in fact, I did not see it coming. The task became more demanding. The phone calls became more frequent. And before I knew it, I was an on demand caregiver, giving more and more to my mom's need and still raising my two now elementary and middle school boys. The swing bys became a series of tasks that needed to be done: cook the food, clean the kitchen, bathroom, change the sheets, take out the trash. Still, it was what was needed and manageable. So I just kept doing it. To the pharmacy again, another medication, another treatment. The role of caregiving kept building, or at least the way I understood it. My mother and my family had defined caregiving as whatever she needs to fill in the gaps. But the gaps kept increasing, and we were both falling through. I didn't know what to do other than to just keep doing what I was doing. Eventually, I started to question what caregiving meant, especially in light of the fact that filling in the gaps with my mom was creating more and more gaps between me and my immediate family, my husband, and my children. My mom had this vision of what getting old and needing more help would look like, what caregiving looked like. Her family grew up on rural farmland on the outskirts of the county seat. She grew up with Grandma so and so moving in just to be tended by her mother, or her Aunt so and so taking care of her mother in law when the time came. It was the woman's job to usher the parent into the last stage of life. As the daughter of my mom, it was my job to do that. My mom had always expected that this would be her future, but she didn't account for the disease to strike her at age 30 and completely debilitate her before she hit age 70. And I certainly didn't, nor did my husband or family. At age 59, as she started to decline more and more rapidly, we were already thinking about life with Granny in our home. And for many reasons, it became increasingly evident that I could not do that. Others' caregiving Others' expectations of caregiving are often based on their ideas, their traditions, and experiences, and are not grounded in the current situation of your own needs, desires, or responsibilities. It would take me almost 10 years to figure this out. I needed to create my understanding of caregiving and what it meant to me and my mom, one that considered my own capacity, not just my mom's needs and wants. I began to ask, but was unsure of the answer. Eventually, I realized that caregiving wasn't about filling in the gaps at the expense of leaving holes in my own life, health, and other relationships. I needed to find a way to give care to myself and her. And if caring for her hurt me, then I needed to change something about that. Thank you so much for listening to the intro and chapter 1 of From Guilt to Good Enough. And if you head to the show notes, you'll find a link there to purchase your own copy. Remember to like and subscribe this episode so that you can get more From Guilt to Good episodes. We've got some great episodes coming up soon. We're changing the conversation around caregiving one episode at a time. And remember, you can be a good caregiver and still have a life outside of caring for your parents.